Hello, everybody, and I'd like to thank you for joining me here on the Chazaq line. Chazaq, of course, has transformed Yiddishkeit for many years, but especially over the last 15 months as we are emerging from COVID. Baruch Hashem, I want to thank them for continuing to give me and the rest of Klal Yisrael opportunities to grow in Torah and Yiras Shamayim. May they continue to have much success and enjoyment in doing what they do for many years to come. I'd also like to thank Chickens for Shabbos, which is exactly what it says. It's Chickens for Shabbos. You and I take for granted that we're able to have chicken every Shabbos. I remember one time going to somebody in Eretz Yisrael, and there was one piece of chicken that was served. And the children were so happy that I would eat the chicken. I'll tell you, I felt like 2 cents eating that piece of chicken. But they insisted, they were so happy that the guest, the Eirich, could have chicken. And I encourage you to think about that for a moment and to donate to Chickens for Shabbos. Thank you so much. Tonight, I will talk to you about Lag BaOmer. And Lag BaOmer is one of the joyous days on the Jewish calendar after 32 days of mourning, when we mourn the 24,000 Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva that died. We now begin a period of joy as we ascend, as we begin our climb towards Har Sinai. 24,000 Talmidim. I once made a cheshbon. I calculated that 750 Talmidim who were Gedolim. 750 of them died every single day. Can you be masik such a thing? And they died because they did not treat each other with honor, with kavod. It's not like that they were spitting at each other. It's not like they were calling each other names. They weren't being mechabed one another. When you're mechabed somebody, that means you're going out of your way to do something to show him honor. And they were lacking in that. And because of that, they would not be those who transmitted Torah to the next generation. Those 24,000 would be wiped out, and Rabbi Akiva would start again with 5 Talmidim. Of course, one of them is the great Tzaddik Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose yahrzeit, not coincidentally, is of course on Lag BaOmer. There's other events that happened on Lag BaOmer that are important to note, and we'll come back to that. For instance, the mun began to fall on Lag BaOmer. The mun, Chazal tell us, people that wanted to receive the Torah could only do so. It was a prerequisite for them to be an oichel man, to eat man. What is the yesod? What is the secret of man? And the Torah tells us, lo yada mahu. They didn't know what it was. And that's why they called it man, like ma. What is it? There's a certain humility there. There's an understanding that I'm a nobody. And Hashem gives me everything. And if you want to be mechabed somebody else, you have to treat yourself as a nobody. This does not mean, chas v'shalom, that you should lose your self-esteem and your confidence. But klape someone else, compared to someone else, you should always treat them as the greater one, as the one deserving more of your honor and your kavod. Fascinatingly, the gematria of kavod is 32. Of course, the gematria of Lev corresponding to the first 32 days of Svira, which lead to the next 17, gematria toiv. That's right, Svira is gematria, Lev toiv, 49. And on Lag BaOmer, we begin the toiv part. We've hopefully worked on being mechabed one another. And that's how we climb towards Har Sinai. It's interesting, the Gemara does not tell us 24,000 Talmidim died. The Gemara tells us that 12,000 pairs of Talmidim died. If you want to learn properly, if you want to grow in Limud HaTorah, so you have a chavrusa and you're sitting and learning, and you're listening to what each other says. And the only way to learn is if you can listen. And the only way to listen is if you understand that you don't have all the answers and that you're chavrusa, you're mechabed them. You show them kavod. Okay, so we've started to uncover, to peel away the layers. And lag, of course, is the letters gal. The pasuk in Tehillim tells us, gal einai ve'abita nifla'os mitorasecha. Gal einai, open my eyes and I will see the secrets of your Torah. I will see the wonders of your Torah. Only if you open your eyes. You know, if somebody can only see themselves, they see not past their nose, they can't possibly see the secrets of the Torah. Lag BaOmer is the day that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Bar Yochai, he gave life to others. He was mechabed others. When he and his son emerged from the cave, his son looked around and everything he saw, he burnt up. But Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai would look at that and he would resurrect it. He would bring it back to life. And you can look at somebody with disdain. You can look at them like, and in one look, you can put them down into the ground. You can belittle them. You can make them feel like dust. But the same is true. With one look, you can be mechabed them. Recently, I put out a book, Prayer of Protection. And a person called me up and he says, one word to me. He says, Rabbi Spero, epic. Now, did he think it's epic? I sure hope he felt it was epic. But with one word, he was mechayim me. He was Reb Shimon bar Yochai. With one word, he was mechabed me. Can you imagine that? How much does it take to be mechabed somebody else? It's not that hard. We can all do it. And we need to put our minds to it and just think about it. And you'll see we'll be able to do exceptional things in being mechabed one another. And I'd like to share with you some incredible stories about this very point. I begin with the story that happened with Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, who was the great tzaddik of Yerushalayim, he was the Rav of the city in the early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. And the whole world, the whole Yiddish Welt knew of Rabbi Yosef Chaim and his greatness and his tzidkis, his righteousness. And Rabbi Yosef Chaim lived in the old city. And on Yom Tov, there is a mitzvah of Kabbalas Pnei Harav. Kabbalas Pnei Harav means that you go to visit your Rebbe. It used to be in the olden days, you go visit the Beis HaMikdash. There was a mitzvah of Aliyah L'Regel. You go up to Beis HaMikdash. But when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, in place of that, we have the mitzvah of Kabbalas Pnei Harav, to go visit the Rav of the city, to go visit your Rebbe, to visit an Adam Gadol, to visit a tzaddik. And the people of Yerushalayim went to go visit the great Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld. In his incredible humility, Rabbi Yosef Chaim said to them, probably you're on your way to the Kaisel Ma'aravi. So nice of you to have stopped by. And every person that came in, Rabbi Yosef Chaim would do the spiel all over again. Oh, so nice of you. Mustama, you're on your way to the Kaisel Ma'aravi. So nice of you to have stopped by. This went on from early in the morning to late at night. Anybody who came to visit. And somebody asked Rabbi Yosef Chaim, Rebbe, why the spiel? Why are you pretending? He says, for a long while this afternoon, there was a big tzaddik sitting at the table. His name, Rav Elio Klatskin. Rav Elio Klatskin was the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshivas Oyel Moshe in the old city, and he used to be the Av Bezdin of Lublin back in Europe. Rav Elio Klatskin was sitting by my table, trying to stop for a moment and think what it must have felt like. Everyone's coming to visit me. No one's coming to visit him. So I said, they're not coming to visit me. They're on the way to the Kaisel. My little house is on the way to the Kaisel. My Rabbi, thank you so much for stopping by. You're on your way anyway. But he wanted to be mechabed, wanted to go out of his way to treat the great Rav Elio Klatskin with kavod, not chatz v'shalom, that he should feel a little bit slighted, that he should slight his honor. Rabbi Yosef Chaim understood that's the way you treat a person, that's the way you treat every Yid. That's one Maisa. A second Maisa, gewaldige Maisa. There was a Yid by the name of Rav Kalman Erlachman. Rav Kalman Erlachman was a Talmud of the Baal HaSulam, who was a great Mekubal, a great Tzaddik. And in 1967, there was a terrible gzeira, a terrible decree against the Jewish people. What happened? They decreed that every dead person should undergo an autopsy. Now we know that Koved Hameis is a very, very big deal. The honor and the dignity and the respect that you have to give a dead person is Adein L'Shar, there is no limit to it. Chas v'sholom, to mark up and to cut into a person who dies. It's terrible. It's a terrible bizoyan hameis. It's a terrible shame for the dead person. And Rav Kalman Erlachman, when he died, they wanted to perform an autopsy. And Rav Kalman Erlachman is laying there in Nebuch. There's nothing to do. There was a Yid by the name of Rav Yosef Yechiel Ashlag, who would later on become the great Admur of Ashlag. And this Yid, this tzaddik, he was a young man at the time. He decided he is going to stop the autopsy, to preserve the covet and the dignity. In those days, and of course today as well, a person dies in Yerushalayim 24 hours, less than 24 hours. It's before the night passes, every person is buried. Minig Yerushalayim. This person, they would not release the body. It was a day and a half, which is an unimaginably long time. But they wouldn't release the body. He did not give up, and Reb Kalman Erlachman, who was dead, needed a kvura, and the Admur of Ashlag as a young man, Rabbi Yosef Yechiel, did everything was in his power, and finally, he pulled it ice. He accomplished. He was able to free the body, and they buried the body. That night, Rav Kalman Erlachman comes in a dream to the Admur of Ashlag, to this young man, and he says to him, I promise you I'm going to pay you back. He says, you don't have to pay me back. What are you talking about? Why do you have to pay me back? He says, I promise you I'm going to pay you back. He says, I did it l'shem shamayim, chesed shalamis. He says, I promise you I will not forget the tova that you did for me. Okay, now, fast forward 50 years. 50 years later, the Admur of Ashlag dies. And when the Admur died, they were looking, they wanted to bury him next to his Rabbi, the Baal HaSulam. And they're looking all around. Can they find the place? They go to the Chaver Kadisha. The problem is that in 1955, when the Baal HaSulam was nifter, for all the kvarim around the Baal HaSulam were all bought up by all the Talmidim, by all the supporters. There was no respectable and honorable place where they could bury the Admor of Ashlag, until they said, wait, we found the place. What happened? One of the people that bought a plot, they had another plot for their son. The family didn't know that they had the plot. And therefore they bought another plot for their son and they buried him there. Gewaldig. They can bury him in a very, very special place. Whose plot was it? It was Rav Kalman Erlachman's son's plot. The one who he had been Moiser Nefesh, to spare him from any bizoyin ameis. He was the one that upheld the covet, the honor, and the dignity of Reb Kalman. Reb Kalman had taka paid him back. And that's an amazing, amazing thing. To come from one world to another world, to promise that I'll pay him back. when you're noyed covered, when you conduct yourself and give and bring honor to somebody else, the Rabbi Shalom does not forget it. And therefore, he made sure that he would receive the honor he deserved when he was buried. And now for the third and final story. This story has a lot of meaning to me, and I'm going to preface it with the following. Baruch Hashem, I have an opportunity to speak. And whenever you speak, you want to knock it out of the park. You want to make sure that you did a real great job. And you want to impress the crowd. And you want to get a yeshikayach afterwards. And hopefully they tell somebody else. Chavrich to Chavri Islay, one person tells the other. And hopefully, you earn yourself a nice reputation. Listen to the following story. Reb Aaron Toysik tells the story about his father. His father was a big baldarshan in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim. And one time they asked him to give a drasha. And he called over his son. He said, I'd like you to prepare the drasha with me. And he sat there and he sat down and he prepared the drasha, but it was beautiful. But then at the very end of the drasha, he said, I'd like to be moisif one thing. He's preparing the drasha and he tells his son, I'd like to be moisif one little point. He says, yes. What would you like to be moisif? And he added in a point. And his son looks at him quizzically and he says to him, Abba, Tati, that contradicts everything you said. It makes no sense. He says, I think it's a good nakuda. He says, Ta, you asked me to come over here and prepare with you the drasha. And I'm telling you, it makes no sense. It's going to make you look foolish. They went to give the drasha. The father gets up and he gives the drasha. And to the absolute puzzlement of his son, he says over that final point that contradicts everything that he had said up until that point. And the crowd's looking at each other and they're bewildered. Made no sense. He finishes the drasha, and all anybody's talking about is the absolute shtus, the foolishness, the idiocy, that he just presented to the Olam. They can't understand it. The son was very upset. And he goes over to his father and he says, I don't understand it. You asked me to prepare the drasha with you. You told me your idea. I told you that it doesn't make sense. I told you that it's going to contradict everything you said. I told you that it's going to puzzle the olam and they're going to think it's a shtus and people are going to tumble about it. And he smiles and he says, I'm well aware. I want to tell you why I did it. The person that spoke before me is a big Talmud Chacham and a big tzaddik. But he's not much of a speaker. And I had to give the drasha. And I thought to myself, if I knock it out of the park, if I give an incredible drasha, all they're going to talk about is how much better I was than him. But if there was some way I could say foolishness, I could make a fool out of myself, I could save him the bizoyin, I could save him the shame and the disgrace. And that makes it all worthwhile. We are now on the verge of celebrating Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is a time when we have to be noyed kavod zeh bozeh. But it's not enough to just go about your business. It's not enough to just be a nice person. Be mechabit people. Think about it. Who needs kavod? Who could use a lift me up, a pick me up? Who's somebody that would appreciate if I could give them a little bit of honor? Kavod, people would say, es kostet nicht kein Geld. It's not like I'm asking you for $1. It doesn't cost you any money to be mechabed somebody else. It's free. And not only is it free, but the Rabbeinu Shalom will be mechabed you. The Rabbeinu Shalom will give you kavod. Kol habayreach min hakavod. Anybody who runs away from kavod, bayreach min hakavod, you run away from kavod. Kavod is roidef acharov. The kavod chases after him. Don't worry, you'll get your kavod. The Chavetz Chaim was humble, and he was very, very big onav, and he just never thought much of himself, or so would have appeared. But now the whole world trembles from the Chavetz Chaim. What does it hurt to give somebody kavod? What does it hurt to let someone else go first? It's Lag BaOmer. Let's think about it. What can we do for others? What can we give to others? How can we make others feel important? And if we do, as we begin this climb towards Har Sinai. Har Sinai was on a mountain, but the lowest and the smallest of the mountains. The Rabbeinu Shalom wanted kavod HaTorah, honor for Torah. Now, if you think that you're all that in a bag of chips, you're all, look at who I am. How can you think of yourself as being lower than the Torah? Sforim tell us, Aseh lecha Rav. You have to make for yourself a Rebbe. Make for yourself a Rebbe. The Goyin says, Aseh lecha Rav, even if you're bigger than the person, make him your Rebbe. Be mechabed him. Give him the kavod. Because this way, we all know that Torah is bigger than we are. I want to wish you all a freilichen Lag BaOmer. I want to wish you all, Em Yitz Hashem, a wonderful climb to Har Sinai. Em Yitz Hashem, we'll see you there.